What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and here we are looking at the Affliction Warlock and the 7.0.3 pre-Legion patch. So this is still WOD content, and this is what we're covering until Legion comes out and everything gets straightened out, because currently Affliction is not doing very well in most situations, except for direct boss attacks. In trash situations, target swapping, it's just not doing very well at all because nothing seems to live very long. So with this in mind, we're going to start off with the talents. Level 15 you have Haunt, Writhe in Agony, and Drain Soul. The choice here is usually going to be Writhe in Agony with Drain Soul if you have any ads that are coming to help benefit on shards. Haunt is actually quite useless in its current iteration, and is just simply used as a nuke in questing. Level 30 you've got Contagion, Absolute Corruption, and Mana Tap. While Mana Tap does very well on the buff, Contagion and Absolute Corruption seem to end up making the rotation a bit better and a little more smoother, especially if you're running with Archimonde's Trinket and the dot time is actually reduced. You're not going to have a lot of time to end up hitting Mana Tap and maintain your dots at the same. Absolute Corruption helps for the simple fact that on multiple targets it just saves that many global cooldowns and it allows the additional ticks, but in a single target only fight, Contagion takes the cake as you end up getting a buff on all your damage just by using Unstable Affliction. And with Writhe in Agony and the way Agony works now, you're really going to see Soul Shard generation pretty high, so you're going to maintain that Unstable Affliction damage and really see a good solid amount of damage here. Level 45, in PvE, Demon Skin is the way to go. It tops out the rest of them. Mortal Coil's heals just not enough, and obviously you're not going to want to Howl of Terror in a PvE situation. Level 60, you have Siphon Life, Sow the Seeds, and Soul Harvest. This is a very situational set, but Siphon Life currently takes over for a couple different reasons. One, your pet, the Fell Hunter, does more damage per dot that's on the target. Two, the health return on it is going to cover just about any time you've got a life tap, and it's just a solid additional damage dot. Sow the Seeds does I'm not going to say very good, but in a mass AoE situation, it does very well compared to what you already do. Even talented, you don't do a hell of a lot of damage AoE, but Sow the Seeds does end up helping in that situation. And then you have Soul Harvest. Again, the generation of Soul Shards is pretty high. Soul Harvest does do okay if you're wanting to go more of a Unstable Affliction nuke build and just nuke down everything, but currently doesn't really play well into the setup, as where Siphon Life's additional damage, if you are high on mastery, is going to do very well. 75 is going to be Mobility and then Dark Pact. Now you have Demonic Circle, which everybody should know if you've been playing a Warlock. It's just your little teleport. Burning Rush, which is going to be a movement speed increase at the cost of health, and then Dark Pact is actually a shield that you can end up using. It's a defensive cooldown. Really weird tier here. But the thing about this tier is you've got a whole world of different gameplay that you can end up doing out of this, and it's kind of nice. Burning Rush is going to obviously be my favorite, but Dark Pact, if in a situation where you know you're going to be taking predetermined damage, is a very strong shield and survivability that already stacks on top of your Soul Leech shield and your additional health that you get. Really, this is going to be up to you and what the encounter is going to entail. If you do need a little bit of additional run speed, Burning Rush will do just fine. You can click it on, click it off when you're needing it. And then you've got 75, which is Demonic Circle. That's great for instant mobility if you need to be at a predetermined spot. And then Dark Pact, the shield's just going to be outstanding for survivability. Very solid choices through here. Now level 90, you've got Grimoire of Supremacy. Just throw that thing out the window. With your Doomguard being on a 3-minute cooldown now for a actual cooldown, that thing is just trash. You can end up having the Doomguard. It'll work great for questing, having the Infernal out, as it does a ton of AoE damage and AoE tanking. But in an actual raid situation or dungeoning situation, Grimoire of Service is usually going to take the cake, and having an additional Fell Hunter come out and do some pretty substantial damage is great. Now Grimoire of Sacrifice, been nerfed into the toilet. It'll be alright for certain fights, so where you have ads come in and you still need to focus a target. Having the additional damage blow up and do damage off to the side. But right now, in a single target situation, even service is outperforming what the sacrifice damage would end up doing. Now, level 100, you have Soul Effigy, and it is going to be top for a couple different reasons. It is not good for trash or swapping targets whatsoever, but the nice part about Soul Effigy is it gives you some additional dot damage on your target that you cast it to, and the other great thing about Soul Effigy is it allows Agony to end up ticking on yet another item and give you additional chances for your Soul Shard building. Phantom Singularity shouldn't even be considered in an AoE situation right now. For questing, it'll be doing just fine because it heals you for each, but currently the tick is not high enough to end up considering in a PvE situation. Soul Conduit's pretty decent also if you're wanting to go more of a channeled build and not a dotted build. With Soul Effigy, you'll find yourself dotting more often than anything, as where Soul Conduit's going to allow you to focus with either Drain Soul or Drain Life, depending on what you want to end up doing. So with this is going to be the talents. What you see up there is the highest recommended that I have tested. Let's go ahead and move on to the generalized rotation. So with the Affliction Warlock, if you've ever played one before, you know that dots are where you keep your damage, and that is where your main rotation is going to apply. The way they have changed the Affliction Warlock, especially if you have Archimonde's Trinket, you're looking at non-stop dotting with very minimal filler spells. So general rotation priority list is going to look like this. You've got which you're always going to keep up. It is now your Soul Shard generator. It's no longer Corruption generating Soul Shards, but Agony is. And it's a big damage loss if you end up dropping it, especially since it takes a pretty decent amount of time to get to a full 20 stacks if you go Writhe in Agony. Do not let this thing fall off, ever. Unstable Affliction is going to be number 2. It's your main nuke and shard dump. It's very high in damage. It plays quite differently than what we remember it, as to where this is not only going to do additional damage, but it's going to do stacking additional damage. It doesn't actually show stacks, but what it'll do is increase the actual tick damage as you increase the damage over time. So if you dump 3 of these, it's going to do 3 times the amount of damage than it would if you ended up dumping 1. Generally, if you have the Soul Shards to use on this, use them. Now the only time this will end up changing is if you went Castagian. Then you're going to want to maybe put 1 or 2 up at a time and try and maintain the Castagian buff as much as possible to increase your overall damage. The next one in line is going to be Corruption. This is just a base dot. It really doesn't hit as hard as it used to. Very weak compared to most, but you're going to want to keep it up on as many targets as possible. Usually the easiest way to do this is if it's up to 3 of them, you'll just hardcast it. If it's 4 plus, you'll want to use Seed of Corruption to end up putting Corruption on everything. Siphon Life, it's a talented dot. Keep it on as many targets as possible. This is not only going to give you a good health return and make it to where you're practically indestructible in most situations, but it's going to also end up giving you a good solid amount of damage. Reason for this, you're looking right now, you have Siphon Life, Corruption, Unstable Affliction, and Agony. Now if you look down, the Fell Hunter pet is going to be your main pet, and the reason for this is because Shadow Bite actually scales and increases by 50% per dot. So you can have Shadow Bite doing 200% increased damage from what you normally end up seeing. Very solid amount of additional damage. Now back up to the top, if you have everything dotted, if you're using Soul Effigy and you've got it maintained to where it's going to stay dotted, then you're going to be looking at Drain Life to do as your single target filler spell, and you're going to want to maintain the Drain Life on the main target. Now with the rest of your dots, always prioritize and make sure that you're getting dots and most of your damage coverage on the main target and not your Soul Effigy, as your Soul Effigy is only doing a percentage of the damage to the actual target, but it still does a very good solid amount of scale damage, so make sure you try and keep it up. If you have to let a Corruption or a Siphon Life fall off of it, go ahead and let it, but if it's Agony, make sure you get it reset because you're going to lose a ton of damage. Now the other thing you need to maintain is Life Tap. They have brought back the fact that haste no longer increases your mana regeneration, so as you are casting, Life Tap is going to be needed to be used for the Warlock yet again. Finally brought the utility back to this to where you can actually end up using it and it's not wasting space on a bar. Basically, you're just going to end up hitting this button whenever you are sub 50% mana and no dots are needing refreshed. Main thing to remember is don't waste this global cooldown if you have to throw up another dot. Finally, you have your cooldowns. Summon Doomguard is going to be your main burst cooldown. It does cost 1 soul shard to summon now, but at the same token, it's on a 3-minute cooldown compared to a 10-minute cooldown that we used to know. A lot of additional damage through this, and it plays very nicely. Grimoire Fell Hunter, it's a talented cooldown, and it also costs 1 soul shard. Overall, this spec has a very high rev up time, and it could end up becoming an issue right now, at least in the Warlords of Draenor 7.0.3 pre-Legion patch. It plays very decently, it's got what Affliction really needs, but currently in this iteration, it doesn't have the Legion model to end up basing the rest of it around, the additional hit points on the mob, so on and so forth, to really make this thing stand out and shine. Later on, when there's a little bit of a better pacing to the kills instead of just real quick on trash, you'll see that this ends up playing a bit better than what it has prior. But right now, in its current iteration in Warlords of Draenor, it's not doing too hot, except for really long boss fights. Finally, we're going to take a look at the general stat priority. Now what you're looking at in this is Intel, Haste, Mastery, Crit, and Versatility. This is overall, across the board, the best way to end up setting up your gear. Intellect is going to be top, obviously for certain reasons. It's going to directly increase your spell power. Spell power is going to just make everything hit harder at a higher scale. Haste, second. For a secondary stat, this thing takes a cake. It is absolutely insane how much damage this will end up increasing. What you're looking at with Haste is a reduced rev up time because your dots are ticking faster. So Agony is going to cap out higher, and then you're going to end up looking at Agony ticking more, so you're getting more soul shard generation, Corruption's ticking more, Siphon Life's ticking more. All these are ticking more and doing even more damage. So what are we looking at outside of that box? Well, the other thing you're looking at is your pet directly. Your pet is also going to be directly affected by Haste, allowing it to attack faster, and then you're also looking at its Shadow Bite coming off cooldown faster, and with all 4 dots running, you're looking at insane amounts of additional damage from your pet. Overall, Haste just beats out the rest completely. Then you have Mastery. Mastery only affects 4 spells, but it is a direct damage increase, and this is going to affect Corruption, Agony, Unstable Affliction, and Siphon Life when talented. Potent Afflictions means all your damage over times, your actual afflicted spells. So whenever you talent, you'll actually see the Mastery Tooltip update, Siphon Life adds in there. Then you have Crit, which everybody knows, 200% increased damage on a spell is great, does good damage. Both Mastery and Crit, Mastery edges out Crit just a little bit, especially when your haste levels increase, but they do sit very close together. And then finally you have Versatility, which Versatility is a overall damage increase, but it's at such a low level it doesn't really matter. These are going to be your generalized stats and why they're going to play out well for you. Hopefully, when Legion drops, you'll see more Affliction Warlocks out there because they do very well, but the current iteration of Warlords of Draenor, as I've mentioned time and time again, does not seem to work with this. Unless you're on a boss single target and you don't have to swap targets too terribly often. So this is going to conclude our guide here. Hopefully everything helped you out just a little bit on understanding. Affliction Warlock just doesn't seem to fit this model currently, unfortunately. Unless you're looking for a solid damage nuke on a single target boss, then it does absolutely fantastic. Hopefully you guys enjoyed yourself, and as always, thanks for watching.